Hello, everyone. This is Brian Zipsey from Horse Racing Nation bringing you another Kentucky Derby edition of HorseCenter. As usual, I'm joined by my partner in crime from New Jersey, Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm really good. Planning our next heist.
Our next heist, well, hopefully it happens sooner than later. We're talking Kentucky Derby preps, and we got one big one. It's a $750,000 race at Oaklawn Park in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and it welcomes back. He's back, Matt, the 2-year-old champion. We haven't seen him since late September of last year, American Pharoah. And Matt, the accolades, the adjectives are flying over how American Pharoah is working for his long-awaited return and his 3-year-old debut in Saturday's Rebel Stakes.
They certainly are, and the accolades are not just coming from his trainer Bob Baffert. They're coming from everybody that's seen the workouts.
That's right. American Pharoah is looking like he might be better than the horse we saw last year. And of course, what we saw last year was awfully good. We only got to see him in 3 races. But when last seen in the front runner stakes against some pretty good horses, Matt, like Calculator, Texas Red, he looked awfully good.
He certainly do. This is really a turning point kind of race. We could end up with a couple of really strong favorites for the Derby after the Rebel, or we could have one sitting up on top alone. So it's going to be a great race to see. Yeah, the Rebel certainly has a terrific history for Derby prep at this point. I mean, besides talking about the dominance that American Pharoah's trainer Bob Baffert has had with 4 wins in the last 5 starts with Opportunity and Secret Circle and the Factor and Looking at Lucky, he owns this race. It's almost getting to be like the Haskell for him. So he loves to bring him here. And so many good horses have come out of the Rebel recently. Aside from those Bafferts, we had Will Take Charge stuck in between. And I know he didn't make any noise in the Triple Crown, but he ended up being a champion. Looking at Lucky, champion and Preakness winner. Go back a little more. Curlin, champion and Preakness winner. Smarty Jones, champion, Derby, Preakness winner. Lawyer Ron, who came into his own the following year, champion, older horse. And even just a few years before that, Victory Gallop, Belmont winner, champion, older horse the following year. This Rebel has got some history behind it. The winner of this race usually has to be respected.
Yeah, Matt, and I can even go back a little further in my Rebel memory. I remember horses like Temperance Hill and Sonny's Halo, classic winners both. A little bit more recent than that, Pine Bluff and Lily T went at it at Oaklawn Park, and of course they won the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown. You're right; it's a great history for the Rebel Stakes. It's a great history for Bob Baffert. I think the Rebel, he's dominated lately, but to tell you the truth, Oaklawn Park, if you look at his graded stakes horses, just coming into Oaklawn Park, he has an amazing record. So that certainly could continue Saturday. I think he'll be a pretty big favorite with the champ American Pharoah in the Rebel. But it's a 7-horse race, Matt, and there are others in here. I agree with what you said. I think he could stamp himself as possibly even the favorite. Dortmund certainly has something to say about that, and I think Carpe Diem entered the fray among Kentucky Derby favorites at this point with performances that we're going to talk a little bit more about in the show. But as far as horses that could give American Pharoah, if American Pharoah is not 100% on Saturday, or he didn't progress as much from 3 as from a 2-year-old to a 3-year-old, we have to look at some of the horses that ran in the Southwest Stakes. It was a wet track that day. But the Truth Where Else came from last, made a big sustained move on the going into the far turn and on the far turn. And he was second that day. He might have hung a little bit in the stretch, but he passed Mr. Z for second. Another horse I like, Bold Conquest, was also in that race, but it was his first race of the year. And he finished up really well to get 4th, not beaten all that much. He is son of Curlin, a Rebel winner, as you mentioned. And then Pletcher was bringing in a bit of a hot horse, a son of Looking at Lucky, made from Lucky, who's gotten better. You might remember him from Monmouth Park early on in his career, but he's won two in a row at Gulfstream Park from the always dangerous Todd Pletcher barn. Any of those three strike you? I think those are the second, third, and fourth choices, respectively, Matt. Any of them have a chance to knock off the Pharaoh?
If American Pharaoh is the American Pharaoh that we saw last year, and I guess maybe is anywhere close to the hype that we're hearing, I think American Pharaoh has got to be my pick in there.
Yeah, we're not going to get much odds, but I'll go with you, Matt. Hopefully, American Pharaoh will stay healthy, and this will be the start to getting him to Kentucky. Because if he's as good as advertised, especially in the mornings of late, he certainly is one of the main contenders for the Kentucky Derby. So that's the big prep of the weekend. How about last week? I should mention, Matt, before we go into the reviews, we got to mention a little bit else. Oaklawn Park has a nice card on Rebel Day. Besides the $750,000 Rebel Stakes with all this great history you talked about, there's two other pretty big races. The Razorback has enhanced itself this year, I think, with the likes of Ride On Curlin and Tapiture, a couple of really nice 4-year-olds and some other good older horses in there. But there's someone that you've kept an eye on closely who's returning that day as well, Matt. What's her name?
We got the return of Untappable in the Aziri. So, like you said, that's a terrific sequence at Oaklawn Park, and it's going to be great to see what Untappable is like as a 4-year-old because she could be a major player in the racing scene the rest of the summer.
Yeah, it's good to see Untappable Matt back this soon in 2015. Of course, she was the dominant 3-year-old filly of last year. So welcome back, Untappable. I'm hoping for a big year. Every once in a while, the 3-year-old fillies don't come back as good as older mares, but we're hoping Untappable is as good and even better than she was last year. That's exciting. All right, Matt, let's start with the review of the rundown of 3 big graded Kentucky Derby preps from last week. What'd you see in the San Felipe?
In the San Felipe, we got the result that was expected with the Dortmund victory, and he's a powerful, determined horse that he just doesn't seem to let anybody get even close enough to go by. Start getting a little near him, and he just pulls away just enough. So again, impressive. He was on the top of everybody's polls this week as the top 3-year-old, and without too much question. Um, I think he's done terrific. I'm still not convinced about the Derby with Dortmund. He's got the size, he's got the strength. I don't know if he's got that burst. We haven't seen that burst of speed yet from him, which is sometimes typical coming around the final turn of the Derby. But wonderful, wonderful performance.
Yeah, it was another good performance. He's 5 for 5 now, Matt. He's a big running son of a gun, isn't he? He always seems to have a little bit left for later in the race, which I think bodes well. Maybe his size isn't an advantage when they have 20 horses at Churchill Downs. Maybe it'll be more of an advantage at the Belmont. I don't know, but he's for real, and I don't know if we've gotten to the bottom of him yet. A couple of horses that we need to mention from that race. I think Bolo ran a very good race on dirt after showing a lot of talent on turf to be a good third. And Prospect Park has become one of my top dark horses now for the Derby. The Son of Tappet, well-bred horse for the Wygots. He's just turned it around this year after a decent 2-year-old year. His maiden win was big in January, and then I thought the way he finished the San Felipe, he looks like a Derby horse to me and a contender to watch down the road.
Yeah, you need that running style. You need those horses that can make a good move coming around the turn to be successful in the Derby. And I agree with you. Both of those could be the kind of horses that could get into the money, get into that trifecta at the Derby.
Yeah, I want to see more from Prospect Park, that's for sure. We'll probably get a chance to see at least the top 2 for sure back in the Santa Anita Derby in April, so that'll be fun. Shifting across the country down to the Gulf Coast and Tampa Bay Downs, Matt, we had a showdown between the undefeated Ocean Knight and one of the best 2-year-olds in the country returning, the WinStar Farm Stone Street joint-owned Carpe Diem. Carpe Diem was a $1.6 million yearling, and he's living up to it, isn't he, Matt?
He sure is, and we sure thought it was going to be a showdown going into the race, but it sure didn't turn out to be one. Ocean Knight Another one of my good picks, I guess, was uh, was a disappointment there. I mean, he was a real no show. Never in it, coming around the turn, didn't really have anything, and then uh, down the stretch, he was basically eased by his rider. Trainer Kieran McLaughlin said that the horse came out of the race fine. So, real head scratcher, real head shaker. Again, the Kieran McLaughlin horses are just not coming through in the Derby preps. So, big disappointment. But on the other hand, Carpe Diem did what he needed to do. He progressed from 2 to 3, looked good in his first start back. So, uh, promising.
Yeah, Carpe Diem. It was a big performance over a track that I think plays well to Churchill Downs. It's a little bit deeper than the other big Florida track, Gulfstream Park. Carpe Diem did everything that was asked of him for sure. He had some tactical speed. He took over the race with a big rush, and he looked good going down the lane. He'll have to go, of course, farther on Kentucky Derby Day, but I think Carpe Diem deserves to be in everybody's top 3 or 5 at least for the Derby. Another Pletcher runner. As far as Ocean Knight, sometimes horses bounce back. It reminds me of a performance by a nice colt you may remember named a Fleet Alex in the Rebel. Fleet Alex, though, came back with a big physical excuse, and Ocean Knight didn't. I think the chances of seeing Ocean Knight in Kentucky Derby Day probably are not good after this one. So Carpe Diem big. No one else really to talk about much from that field. A couple nice colts finished second and third, but probably not Kentucky Derby contenders.
Yeah, I agree, Brian.
Okay, so finally we're going to go to New York, your neck of the woods. In fact, I think you were there, Matt.
Absolutely was.
You weren't riding one of the horses, were you?
No.
I saw somebody with gray hair in the winner's circle, although he was wearing jockey silks, wasn't he?
You did. You saw veteran CC Chucky Lopez in the winner circle after the race, and I don't know what it is. The Aqueduct fans, and there are no other racing fans in the world like the Aqueduct racing fans. They love Chucky. Before the race, when he's uh, on the horse heading out onto the track, the fans are yelling for Chucky, and after the race, they're just yelling for him, and it was pretty cool. Here's a veteran jockey, over 4,000 wins, 54 years old, never won a Grade One, never been in the Derby.
He still hasn't won a Grade One. He still hasn't been in the Derby, but his chances are looking really good for both of those to happen soon. It was nice that the Zayats said they're going to stick with him. Matt, I remember seeing Chucky Lopez win races at Monmouth
Oh,
Park more than 30 years ago, and here he is on a real Kentucky Derby contender. We're talking about El Kabir, of course, the winner of the Gotham. It's his third graded stakes win, so he's a very nice horse. He's not one of my top Kentucky Derby contenders, but it's hard to fault a horse who keeps running good races and keeps winning. On the other hand, the horse that ran second, I think, deserves mention. Matt, we both liked him as our long shot. He went off at about a 10, 11 to 1 in the
yep.
Gotham, and Tishay D ran a very good race considering he only had a 5.5 furlong maiden race as experience going into the Gotham.
Yeah, I agree. He ran a terrific race, and I think his inexperience showed up a little bit coming down the stretch. He had a rail trip all the way around, which wasn't a bad thing, but coming toward in the last 16th of a mile, it started to get a little tight on the rail. He seemed to be a little hesitant, but eventually he went through a very small opening to get up for second place, and was certainly not losing ground to the hard charging El Kabir. Um, Once El Kabir got to the lead and swept to the lead, Tishay D hung with him and got through that opening on the rail. I think that's a horse with some promise. Riley Mott, Bill Mott's son, who is now heading the New York String in the winter, was very very happy with the race.
As well, he should be, Matt. I don't know if this horse is going to be ready for the Derby with only the 5.5 furlong maiden and the Gotham so far under his belt, but we agree, he's a horse to watch. I thought that stretch run was tight, the hole, and it made him hesitate. I think he could have been a lot closer at the finish if there was a little bit more room for him. El Kabir was the best horse and deserved to win, but Tiz Shady might have a bigger future ahead of him, so we're agreed on that. I think we're agreed on everything. Carpe Diem, big. Dortmund just continues to impress. He's also big, 17 and then
Yes.
some hands. El Kabir, a nice horse who keeps winning. and Prospect Park, and maybe Tish JD, maybe a little later down the road for Bill Mott now as horses to watch. So those were the preps from last week. We also agreed on the Rebel. American Pharaoh kind of stands over the field, but Bold Conquest, the Truth or Else, and Made from Lucky are all horses who could prove to be dark horses for the Derby, and maybe we'll see a little bit of this on Saturday. Any closing shots for the fans out there are watching? I know Joe is watching us, Matt. We have at least, I think we have two fans. I think Ethel said she's watching as well.
uh, yes, Brian, and if Mojo is a factor in any of this, I hope that American Pharaoh comes back big for the Zayat stable, because Mr. Zayat did the right thing after the race when he made the commitment to Lopez to stay on the horse the rest of the way, win, lose, or draw in the wood. Uh, and if El Kabir stays healthy, Lopez is going to be on him in the Derby, and he didn't have to do that. Chucky said after the race that he was worried that he was going to lose the mount. So, classy move by the Zayats. I hope because of that they get a big race from their top horse, American Pharaoh.
Good stuff indeed. Go Chucky. I'm going to leave you with Prospect Park, Prospect Park, Prospect Park. He really, I liked his maiden win, and I thought he just gave me everything I wanted to see out of a Derby horse. He might not be one of the favorites right now, but I think Prospect Park is really a horse to watch. Thank you all for watching another Kentucky Derby edition of HorseCenter. Thanks to Matt for joining me today. Ember back in the main office in Louisville. And we will see. We're brought to you, of course, by Horse Racing Nation and Derby Wars. We'll see you all next week.